if you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
We've got a guest on today who's been on before, Menke Steenbergen. Now, last time she said to achieve big dreams, you must take lots of little steps. And I think where Menke's come to within her journey with horses, she's taken lots of little steps. She's a veterinarian, but she's also a riding instructor. And now she's dabbling in technology. So she, if you have a look at IPOS technology, it's IPOS technology.com. You'll see what she's been up to there. If you haven't had a listen to her before, go back, have a listen, number 628, and get to know Menke a little bit more. And today we're going to be talking about 10 benefits of measuring your training efforts. How are you, Menke?
Hey, how are you? Yes, thank you.
Very well. Very well, Menke. Thank you. Before we start, I just want to have a quick chat to people to let them know that if they want to work in the horse industry and they're not sure where to start, then have a chat to our friendly team at International Horse College with a wide variety of horse courses from the complete beginner through to the qualified professionals and students in other 20 countries. We'll be able to consider your individual requirements and guide you in the right direction. Simply go to internationalhorsecollege.com now to start the conversation. Registered Training Organisation 31352. Now, Menke, this benefits of measuring your training efforts, it's pretty important. If even a horse for pleasure that we're just riding on the weekends, we still want to know what they've been up to. And, you know, if something affects them the next day, we want to be able to go back and know about the sort of training efforts, you know, right through to having sort of racing horses and 3-day eventers. So I think this is a pretty important one. And you being an instructor as well as a vet, I think you're the ideal person to talk to us about it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It is important to actually like get to know what you're actually asking of the horse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Understand. Yeah.
Now, if we've got to know how fit our horses should be, how are we going to know how fit they should be? You know, I might say, well, my horse is fit because he's not fat, but he might just be underweight and skinny. You know, how can we tell if the horse is going to be fit? What are we looking for?
Well, the first thing actually to recognize is that it's very hard to know because we're on top of the horse, and we know that horse riding for riders ourselves it is not that intense as it is for the horse. Mm-hmm. So basically, your feeling about how intense a training or whatever you ask of the horse, your feeling about it is probably not the same experience that the horse is having. So that is, I think, the first thing to acknowledge. Mm-hmm. And so that is also why I think it's very important to get more objective measurements in place to know what it is that you're asking.
Yep.
And then the second thing is that it is very different. So as you were saying, like for a recreational horse, it is very different from what we're asking from a 3-day eventer. And there's nothing good or bad or better on any of those occasions. It's just good to acknowledge. And if you want to know what you are asking of a horse, measure the end result. So how fit your horse should be, it is actually what you want it to be.
Okay.
But know what the end result should be.
Okay, so they should be fit for the purpose that they're intended for, which I suppose even means like a broodmare, doesn't it? You know, a fit broodmare has to be fit to be able to give birth. Is that correct or not? Or have I got that wrong?
Yeah. And you have different demands from a mare than from a competition horse. Yes, definitely.
Yes. Now, we have to keep track not just of the intensity of the training. So if we talk about intensity, you know, we could go out for a 2-hour trail ride or, you know, all-day trail ride, and it's not going to be the same as some very solid work in the arena, and especially if we then went out and did some work around a gallop track or something. So we might only do that over sort of 45 minutes as opposed to all day. So the intensity of training would have to be fairly important, wouldn't it?
Right, right. So in an ideal world, I think we should all actually train every day with heart rate monitoring on the horse.
Okay,
And so
okay.
that we have like more an objective insight in the intensity, and then you see the heart rate go up, and you see when the horse gets into the red zone, huh? And we know that we don't want to overload horses in that red zone. But the reality is that only a few riders train with heart rate monitoring. So we thought we should get an alternative in place.
Yes,
And
yes.
so we translated the average heart rate increase per gait. We know that there's an average heart rate increase in trot and an average in canter. And so we actually translated all the minutes that you spend in that gait,
Mm-hmm.
and we calculated an intensity based on the minutes you spend per gait. And so we were taking a couple of shortcuts there because we know there's variation between horses, and there's variation in like, for example, the exercises you train or the surface you train on. But I think still monitoring the minutes you spend per gait can give you some sort of an insight in how intense that training was for your horse.
Yes, yes. Yeah. I suppose with a heart rate monitor too, you'd know if the horse is finding it hard. Like if the horse is going to come down with he's not well, you could probably
Right?
pick it up a bit sooner on the heart rate monitor than what you might find the
Sure.
next day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You,
yeah.
you can even see if a horse has a hard time going on the right circle instead of the left, or you
Yes.
find out way more. But yeah, so yes, definitely heart rate monitoring gives you more information.
Yep.
We wanted to fill that gap in between people riding with heart rate monitoring or not knowing anything at all. And we thought it might be a good idea to at least keep track of the minutes you spend per gig.
Yep, yep,
In order
yep.
to tell you something about the intensity, and also in relation to the days before, and comparing it with other riders.
Yeah, and this is with the training application, isn't it? Because it's on the website, the ipostechnology.com website, that you've got a training application. I've actually downloaded that training application, and there's quite a lot in it, and I have used another one. I've got to say this is a bit superior than the one that I've used. It's got the training, it sort of goes through, it's got logbook, what the trends are over time, profile, and you can actually have it for a few different horses as well. So, I think it's something we'll talk about, I think, is the application, because I think that's probably something that everyone can do, and it's free, and there's an upgrade. Is that right, if you want more intense information?
Right. So there you can request for membership, and
Yep.
well, let me say just put in the blog and that you heard of us, and then I'll give your members a free membership also to try out all the features.
Okay. Yep.
And I think the most important one is actually the analyzing of trends over time. Because
Yes.
you just put your phone on the horse and then you measure the intensity of the training.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the most important one is to analyze the intensity over time. So just like in heart rate monitoring, you would require 21 days of measuring to actually know a little bit about the level of fitness that you're at with your horse.
Yep. Okay, now just going back to the intensity of the training, tell us a bit about overloading and how we can prevent it.
Yeah. So first of all, I have a background in veterinary medicine, and
Yes.
I thought it is sometimes hard. As I was saying in the introduction, it's hard to feel what actually the load of a training is as a rider, because you're not the one actually performing. Whereas if I go to a gym and I do my workout there, the next day I will for sure know how heavy that training from yesterday was. And so the horse is experiencing the same thing, only now he cannot say that he has sore muscles or actually something that he thought the training was a little bit heavy. So we have to actually be very cautious and very aware of what we have been doing the day before. Yeah. And I think a lot of issues, if we look at the tendons in the lower leg or at the muscles, especially in the back of the horse, we see some serious damage there, because of a issue with the loading, with the gradually building up of the training effort. So getting the right muscles in the right place is very important. The top line of the horse and making it strong enough to actually do what you want it to do. We go back to number one. Know what the fitness of your horse should be. Where does it need those muscles very specifically? And know how much you are actually asking of him. And then I think overloading is something that happens a lot, and it is not necessarily damaging the first day. But if you overload horse a little bit, but you do it every day on a specific muscle or tendon, then you get this micro damage that over time, if you micro damage a tendon long enough, it will actually go tear or injure or even worse, lameness.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure to prevent that, and I think we have to do more to actually know what we're doing.
Yes. Okay. So, and I know that you said, look at the trends over time, but if we're going to do it responsibly, how can we build up the strength and stamina responsibly then? What tips have you got there?
Yeah. So, then we're going into the physiology of training. And research is fairly slim if you look at the horse physiology. It's actually like giving you exact training schedules, like very practical. But there is a lot of research being done, for example, by Hilary Clayton and others, that actually give you some pretty useful guidelines on how to build up this load. And in literature, they call it progressive loading. So you have to do it gradually. And in general, the rule would be to not increase your training intensity with more than 10% per week. And start measuring it, because 10% it doesn't tell you anything, because we do everything by gut feeling. So 10% is a lot. No, we don't know. That's the fact. We just don't know. But 10%, I can tell you, it feels like not a lot until you start going to the gym yourself. So take 10% extra every week. And then another rule of thumb you might want to keep in mind is that we have actually three distinguishing, let's say, factors over this training. You have the frequency of the training sessions per week. You might say I do a training every other day, so that would mean like 3 or 4 times a week.
Sure. Yep.
And then you have the duration of the training, which could be I'm training for 40 minutes per session. So now we have 3 sessions of 40 minutes a week. And then you have the intensity of one session, which in our case might mean an intensity of 40. Start measuring if you don't notice. And then if you want to increase the load of the training responsibly, only take one of those 3 factors. So don't start training more often, longer, and intenser, because that will for sure cause an overload. Only do one of the 3. So, for example, you say, I will do an extra session. So instead of 3 sessions a week, you take 4, but you keep everything else the same. The duration and the intensity of the session stay the same.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then if you increase one of those items, then you do that for 1 week, and then you consolidate the next week. Don't go increasing another factor. Consolidate, stay at the same level in the second week, and then only in the third week you will increase, for example, the duration of those 4 sessions. There's some science behind that, and experience from researchers and horse riders that you have to actually know what you're doing, especially because you cannot feel in your own body what you have been doing.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Now, I'm thinking about, we talked a bit about fitness and we're looking for the muscles, but if we talk about growing muscles on our horse, are they really growing or are we building them up? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in my experience, I see very enthusiastic horse riders, especially if you only have one horse. It's your hobby, it's your life, it's your dream. You have this ambition, and And basically, you want to do everything for this horse and to make it happen. And building muscle is one of the important things you want to achieve for your sport. Only you can actually deteriorate the muscle if you go too fast. And sometimes you see these very lean horses, and you think, where is the muscle going? Why is this horse not building up muscle? And I think having this knowledge of the physiology of the horse, of the physiology of training, actually helps you to build it up better. And we'll in the next topic, we will show you how actually you can do this more responsibly and what is important for those muscles.
Okay.
But knowing physiology is one thing. And then I just want to say that besides having this insight in training intensity, also the feeding of the horse is very important.
Okay. Yes, it's almost a subject in itself, isn't it?
Right. That
We
could
will.
be a whole
We
other
will
blog,
certainly. Yes, certainly talk to you about that in the future, I think, Menke.
But having the right muscles,
yes,
the right muscles in the right place is crucial for keeping your horse sound and perform, of course.
And you talked about the physiology of training, and is it like we need to train the horse in our own discipline? We want to improve our own discipline, because you talked about the top line of the horse, like how important is it to work the horse within their own discipline?
Yeah. So there's this the discipline that you want to compete in. That is one topic. Which makes it very different from the type of muscles that you want to have on the horse and the location of the muscles. You can imagine for a jumping horse, you would like to have like big fat hind legs to actually do that lift off, and for a endurance horse, you might want to have more stamina and like type 1 muscles that can last for a long time. And those horses might look more lean, but they're actually very good in keeping up a rhythm for a long time. So yes, so it depends on the discipline that you want to compete a horse in, or recreational use a horse for.
Yep.
But it also has to do with your own discipline. So acknowledge that it is not just you that needs to be fit, and it is not always the fact that you have to train 6 days a week for 60 minutes. Which is also a discipline in itself. But you have to sometimes also restrain yourself from training and make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time.
Okay.
And it doesn't always mean to train more or more heavy or every day. I know a lot of riders, they go every night to their horse and ride every night for an hour, which is not always the good thing to do. So have the knowledge and the restraint to do the right thing at the right time.
I suppose that's when we're going to bring in the variation into the training. Is that right?
Yeah. Sure. You're a good bridge maker. Yeah. So you could say, like, I talked a lot to high level trainers as well, and they find out that training less is sometimes more for the horse. And they don't mean that they have less time. They spend less time with the horse. Movement and low intensity movement is still a very important factor for the horse during the day. But what they mean is that their discipline-specific trainings they do less of. That might mean that they only do one specific training every 4 days, and that the horse actually only has 2 intense training a week. And then in the days in between, they have to do recovery training, or they make fun. They give the horse also some mental recovery, and they give them something else to think about. For example, doing a hack outside in the woods, which often a hack is intense for a horse because it also introduces a stress factor, but it is also some variation. Mm-hmm. Or do a walking with the horse, only in walk for 2 hours on a straight line on a hard surface. You can go out into the woods and not even do a trot, which is something else that you have been doing, but it is variation. Think about doing a jumping course. If you are, for example, a dressage rider, that's very good gymnastics for the horse's back, and vice versa, of course. So I think
we are too much doing the same thing over and over, and your creativity basically is the limit. And if you have 2 very discipline-specific trainings a week, that is more than enough to build those muscles.
Okay. What about then rest days? How often is that, like once a week or once every 4 or 5 days? How often should we have? I won't say, because some people might say, well, my horse has 5 days rest and I ride it once or twice. But to do with fitting, is it how often should a horse have a day's rest, or how do we know when they need the day's rest?
Yeah. So then I'm assuming that you want to increase those muscles, right? So there's nothing wrong with having like quiet days for the whole week. If you don't want to increase the muscle or fitness of your horse, that is fine. You can do like recreational rides the whole week long. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
With rest days, by the way, I do not mean to keep the horse in a stall for 24 hours over the day.
Okay.
So rest days is in between those discipline-specific trainings. So let's say on Monday you have a show jumping training. You're really pushing it. You're going for the just a little bit higher jump, a little bit more like on the specific muscles that you want to train on your horse. The question is, when can you actually introduce another one of those discipline-specific trainings and not overload your horse? That is the question.
Okay.
So what we have done in the application as well is that we measure the intensity of that training, a discipline-specific training. We compare that with the average trainings that you have been doing for the last 21 days. And this is based on the work that has been done with heart rate monitoring. So if we know what you've been doing for 21 days, we can estimate how heavy that specific Monday training was for this horse. You can imagine if it's a young horse and you have been training a little, a similar training might appear more heavy to that horse than when you have a 10-year-old, very experienced and fit show jumping horse. For him, this training might be even below his fitness level, his average. So knowing the intensity of one training in relation to the history of that horse can actually tell you something about how relative intense that training was. And so if you do a calculation on that, compare the intensity with the average, you can say, hey, and we even divide it for you. So it is the intensity divided by that average, and we call that average, we call it your fitness level.
Yep.
And then you get a ratio. And it will tell you if you have a intensity twice as high as your fitness level, you might want to have 2 days of rest afterwards. So that means on Monday, intense training and 2 days of recovery training. Don't put it in a stall for the whole day. He's still giving the movement. He needs free movement in the paddock. He needs like social contact during the day with other horses. But you also need to do recovery training. And with that, I mean flexing the muscles, keeping him subtle, doing variations in your training, and actually giving those muscles the time and the blood flow to recover and grow.
Yep. No, that makes sense. I think the way that you've explained it there, it'll change. It's not just, yes, your horse must have 1 day off a week. And as you said, if they've had a really intense time, you might have 2 days. So you've got to look at the horse, and the horse will tell you. Yeah.
And the good thing is we will not know. You don't feel it in your own body. But it might be 4 days even. It's not uncommon to have like for 3 or 4 days recovery after a heavy training.
Okay.
The thing is now we just don't know. So we have to organize our information better.
Okay. Now, if we're going to compare how fit our horse is with others, because we might have a few in work, or we might want to compare with our friend's horse, or we might even want to compare with earlier in their training and how fit they are now.
Yes.
What's the best way to do that?
Well, first of all, I want to stress the difference that I have been seeing between riders. So there's always in this competition, right? You're in show jumping, and then you have the last fence, and you go like, oh, the pole came down. Oh, bad luck, bad luck. I don't think so. Sometimes it has to do with luck, but maybe there's something else going on. How are those riders training? The ones that actually end up at the first all the time, you know. And the same goes for dressage. How are they training? What are they doing different? And so, with doing a lot of measurements over the last years, I've found out that there's indeed a lot of difference between how people train and how much people train and how intense and how they build it up. And I found that if I have to make some general comments over that, comparing with others, which is very general, I think something that top riders do very well is that they don't get their horses in the red, let's say. And so even a competition for a horse trained at high level, it is easy peasy. It is what they have been known to do. It's very common for them. Mm-hmm. I've even heard top riders saying that they will just take the horse to a competition every weekend. I said, but you have 20 horses here. Yes, he says, I take them all every weekend. And they don't even need to compete. I just put them in the trailer. I take them to a competition site. Okay. I train them. I do a couple of jumps, and then I put them back in the trailer. It is about getting them used to everything and getting them at that intensity level that we require, so that, remember I'm saying this 21-day measuring, that then you know what you actually have been doing for the past 21 days. So this is what your horse is accustomed to. If that is something completely different from what you're asking at a competition, so come back to point one, know how fit your horse actually needs to be in order to compete. You cannot expect the horse to win if it is over it is way over what he's been used to. Comparing with others, the application will also provide some more information in the future. But I think it's good to know that there's a lot of difference at the moment, and that actually it is important. It is also a distinguishing factor in who actually is the most fit, who arrives the most fit, will also probably win at the end.
Yep.
Now, I think,
oh, absolutely. I'm just thinking, we need technology to assist us, Menke. We've got, I can remember when I was doing, eventing and doing 3 days, and we didn't have, we would take the temperature, pulse, respiration, but we'd sort of do that, either in the middle or at the end of the training or something. We didn't have the heart rate monitors. We didn't have the apps. We didn't have all of the stuff we've got now. And I know because technology will keep changing and it will keep getting more and more rapid, but the technology we've got now that can measure all that, the IPOS training app that I know, you go to the App Store, or I don't know if it's the same on the Google Play Store. It's just IPOS app, I think it was called. IPOS app. Is that, I'm thinking the technology. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the app and about how that can help us, so that it's beneficial to measure our training efforts?
Yeah. I think we've been talking about it throughout the topics, but it's funny. We call it IPOS because the Greek, they called horses ippos. Actually,
ippos.
With a little apostrophe. Okay. Ippos. No, it's okay. That's how the Greek called horses, and it's funny to see how little has changed over the years in training horses. It's still very traditional and ancient, so we'd like to refer to the Greek ippos and their knowledge, but bringing the whole industry into the 21st century now. And that's why we actually just extracted one P and it became IPOS. Because I think, we are in this age and technology can just help us. It will never replace the good insights from instructors and keeping an eye on your horse and actually seeing what is going on in the horse. So we never say just rely on technology, but it is an aid and it can help you make more educated decisions and more data-driven decisions in actually managing and training your horses. And so we have the application. we're building on rein sensors that actually measure the communication between the horse and the rider. I think that is also some of the skills very important to master, how you communicate with your horse. And so we actually are combining the application with rein sensors later on this year. I mean, technology, sometimes people are a little bit afraid of it, and it will definitely change how we are training, and it will it will all of a sudden give you data and numbers. So if I'm talking about intensity of training, I can tell you, oh, my training has an intensity of 35. How was your training? And so at first you have to like blink your eyes and you go like, I don't even know. I don't know what is the intensity. So yes, it will require some diving into experience. It's a new experience, but I think for sure it will change the dialogue around the training.
And definitely, and as you say, you're not going to not use your vet, not use your instructor, but it's a great support, great, it's a compliment, isn't it? It just complements everything else that you're doing. Yeah. And I think, to our listeners too, a challenge for today would be to download that app.
I know, but it's not a challenge.
Yeah, not a challenge. It's more of a to-do list. It's like, will I have time to do this? It's a bit challenge if you're technologically challenged, I suppose. But, it's something that it will continue
do it. Well, we're on the phone anyway all the time. So just go to the App Store, download iPros, have a go. And you can just put the phone on your horse. It will measure the gait.
Yes.
If you like a membership, just apply for a free trial membership, and we will actually give away some of those free memberships. Yeah.
Okay, and just mention the podcast as well, and mention that Menke talked to you about it today. Now, if people would like to contact you, is the best way the IPOS technology or IPOS technology.com, is that the best way? Because there's a contact page on that website. Yeah. So you can
indeed. Just leave a message, and we really look forward to collaborating with all parties in the horse industry. Mm-hmm. So if you have any ideas, we're building a team of engineers, software and hardware engineers that is here to last. So we're not done yet. So this is something we will keep on growing, and we have lots of ideas on how to move forward as well. But we really like to be inspired by the community. So help us out, give us tips and tops, and and we love to collaborate. Also with other technology developers or anybody that has ideas in how this whole industry can move forward. That is basically what we're here for.
That would be absolutely wonderful. Absolutely. Yeah. Menke, thank you for chatting to us today. We're looking forward to chatting to you again. And I know that we'd sort of talked about, I'd like to just talk a little bit more about the rein sensors, but I know you're going to come back and talk about feeding as well. So I just think I will catch up with you very soon in the near future.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be nice. Thank you also for this lovely chat. Thanks.
No worries. Okay, bye. If you've enjoyed this chat, then please comment, rate and subscribe. If you'd like any changes or recommendations for guests, then please contact us through horsechats.com. And while you're online, have a look at the government-accredited courses at internationalhorsecollege.com. Registered Training Organisation 31352.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.